Just waiting for the magic thumbs up, which I've just got, which is great. How's everyone? Good? Yeah. Well, I asked, so that's good. Right, so welcome to a Q&A with Anna Griffin. Who's going to talk to us, you, me, all of us, about producing and being a producer and the career journey. I'm going to read this bit word for word so I don't get in trouble. We hope you enjoy today's session and get as involved in the week, although there's only a little bit left, as much as possible. We'd love you to share your week with us by posting your photos to your social accounts using hashtag IW22, by tagging Confetti on Instagram and Twitter. Oh, you'll be entered into a competition. That's good. And the best photos that you vote for can win a £50 Amazon voucher, which you could buy a gift for me with, which is nice. Don't forget you can still book onto upcoming events by going to iw.confetti.ac.uk. Make sure you sign in using your NTU email address. And on that website, you can check out previous year's talks and masterclasses on the on-demand section. And if there is a fire alarm, please make your way to the nearest fire exit and go to Beck Street across the road from Antenna. Just follow Chris, who'll be screaming and shouting and running for his life. Find Chris, find safety. And finally, if you're in your final year, it's worth noting that the NTU employability team are offering extra careers coaching appointments next week to help you get ready for your next steps. So if you go to the employability learning room for more information, and now introduce you to name of guest, Anna Griffin. Okay, so Anna's an independent film producer that's based in Nottingham. Her credits include the BBC and BFI-backed The Levelling by Hope Dixon-Leach and the Netflix breakout hit Calibre from Matt Palmer. In 2020, Anna launched her own production company, Griffin Pictures, with the support of the BFI's Vision Award. She's also a Screen Star of Tomorrow and BIFA nominee, and her most recent short film, The Tunnel, was BAFTA longlisted in 2022. So let's all welcome Anna. Hello. I've lost my notes. Which on here? Stand by. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Could you give us a brief overview of your career so far? So whenever anybody asks me this question, I always feel like a bit of a fraud because, unlike you guys who are working extremely hard and know what you want to do, I left university and had no idea what I wanted to do, and went to the pub one day and met a girl called Rachel, who's now one of my best friends and colleagues. And she was a third AD, and she'd just come from set, and she's still got the earpiece in her ear, and I like her set bag, and she just looked really cool. And I was like, oh my God, what do you do? And then she told me, and I was like, what's that? And then at the time, and I'll probably go into this more a bit later, Nottingham in the East Midlands was like at a boom for filmmaking, because we used to have a screen agency called East Midlands Media, and they had lots of funding. And so at the time, there were feature films going back to back to back. And I just fell in at the right time. She banded my CV around, which at the time had nothing on it apart from uni and H&M and rescue rooms. And then managed to land, well, I had a couple of interviews actually. One with a guy called Tristan Gallagher, who's an amazing producer now. If you Google him or go on IMDb, he's done loads of incredible stuff, including a beautiful film called Weekend that was shot here in Nottingham. Anyway, I had an interview with him to be a production runner, and he said, do you have a car? And I said, no. And he said, do you have a laptop? And I said, no. And he said, well, I can't employ you then. So I bought a car for like 400 quid and then bought a laptop. And then I was suddenly employable. So that's one thing to think about when you're starting at the bottom. Make yourself as employable as possible. And then from there, I just did like production running jobs, floor running jobs, then landed a job as director's assistant for Nicholas Winding Refn when he shot Bronson in Nottingham. And it just sort of went on from there. But how I got into producing in a way was because, again, I was super lucky getting into the industry at the time, because the screen agency had all this funding. That all got dismantled when the lovely Tories came in, and they sort of dismantled all the regional screen agencies and gave all the money to the Central Point, which became the BFI, and they got rid of the UK Film Council. So that meant that all of the screen agencies disappeared, everything went really central, loads of the crew migrated to London, and then suddenly there was no filmmaking happening. I mean, I'm looking at you like you might remember this time, but... Yeah, DV Shorts. Yeah, exactly, DV Shorts, which was an amazing short film scheme that EM Media did. So then there was like nothing in the city at all, and I didn't want to move to London. So because I had a silly boyfriend at the time, and then so I went on the dole, and one day when I went to sign on, they said, "Oh, there's somebody here from the Future Jobs Fund," which again was a hangover from an old Labour government policy that had been put in. And it was where small independent companies who didn't have enough money to employ people but needed people in order to grow could apply for money from the local councils to bring somebody in for like 2 days a week. So I went and had a look, and there was a media folder in this room, and it had one piece of paper in it, and it was one film company called Wellington Films. And I was like, oh, I know these guys because I worked with one of them on my first ever film. Anyway, long story short, got a job with them as a production assistant for 2 days a week, paid for by the council. And then because I was there and because they got some more funding to bring somebody else in from Screen Skills, or Creative Skill Set it was called at the time, they then as individuals had the capacity to fundraise for their company because they'd got 2 employees to do the groundwork. And from there they got more money, and I stayed there for 10 years. And then that's who I did the levelling and calibre with before I moved off. So unlike you, I fell into it. It was all a happy accident. You guys are working really, really hard, know what you're doing. So you're one step ahead.
Once you'd fallen in, how did you, what made you want to stay being a producer or keep going along that career path?
That's a good question. So I did English at uni because, again, when I went to uni, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And English is just a good one to do because it's got such transferable skills. But also my main love has always been storytelling. So I knew that I wanted to be involved in the telling of stories in some capacity. And what I learnt that I was quite good at Wellington was development. So I felt like, perhaps I am, I don't know, but I really enjoy working with writers from the idea up, and you know they can come to me with just an idea or one page of what they're doing before they've even gone to script, and I will work directly with them to build that into a bigger story, get it to the script stage. And I think what I love about being a producer, particularly a creative producer rather than someone who just finds the money and gets the job done, who are amazing, I love being there from the very beginning of an idea all the way through to when you see it on the big screen.
So the kind of the role you do now and the role you enjoy, what have been the like the key points of experience that you've picked up along the way that have really shaped you into be able to do what you do now? Top tip.
For being a producer, you just have to be really tenacious and just don't give up, because you'll have the writers wanting to give up all the time because it's really hard to write, and you'll have the directors thinking that it's never going to happen, and then you're the one in the middle that has to convince them it is going to happen even though you don't know when. And you've just got to keep going, find the money, find the support, and then find the crew, find the everything, find the locations, and just see it all through. So you have to be really tenacious. And I think one of the big learning curves was when I did Parjo and the Lion, because that's a beautiful documentary film made by a guy called Benjamin Wigley, who used to be based out in Broadway. And that was really different because it's a creative documentary, but we were finding the story as we went along. It's not like we could make the story up and then go and film it. We had to work with the subjects and follow their lives over, I think it was 5 or 6 years, and really bring out that beautiful story. And that story came out in the edit, which is often what happens with documentaries. You know, you find your story and your narrative when you're sat there in the edit suite. So that was a really beautiful experience to sort of be really so close to the subjects and watch their every movements and figure out where the story and the arcs come, rather than seeing it from the page and translating it.
For those in the room that aren't planning on producing being their career path, and they're thinking it from the other side of the coin, how do they go about meeting producers and building their strong working relationships with them?
Well, there's lots of things that you can do once you've graduated. There's the BFI crew that you should have a look at online. I think it's called BFI X Crew or BFI Crew, and you can apply for that. And if you get onto that, then there are nationwide events that happen. Everybody's crew members from every different department, and they'll have producers on there as well. You can meet you can meet writers and directors. So if you want to be a DP or if you want to be a sound designer or whatever your element is, you can find those people that you get on with, that you want to work with, and just start doing stuff really, and sort of building your own little network. Because that was what was so beautiful about the time when EM Media was happening and was around, was because there was such a network of filmmakers that everyone was working on each other's films, even if they weren't getting paid, or, you know, it was just something they were doing at the weekends. And Shane Meadows did loads of stuff with his neighbours at the weekends, and they became amazing films that everybody looks back on now. And Simon Ellis was making short film after short film every weekend. And, you know, everybody was doing something on those films. And that's how you meet your contemporaries, that's how you build your experience. And you've got such brilliant platforms now that we didn't have back in the day. You know, you can put your films on Vimeo, you can submit them to see if they'll get a staff pick, you can put them on YouTube, you can put them on all of these platforms that you're going to find an instant audience for. And if people say they're shit, then you ask them why, and you learn from it, and you just keep building and building.
You mentioned doing lots of work with different people, and, you know, and try and work constantly, keep things going. Looking back, would your advice be to keep making lots of perhaps, like a better term, middle-of-the-road shorts, or make fewer brilliant short films?
Well, that's difficult, isn't it? Because I think you need to build up your experience, and then I think just do what you can do and learn your practice, because you'll start knowing what is good and what is bad, and you'll start taking stuff down off YouTube if you don't like it, you know, and you'll start building your portfolio. And it's important to have those, because then when you do feel that you're ready to get some industry support from, say, BFI Network, which is the sort of platform for first-time filmmakers, you can apply to them for short film funding. Then they will look back on your previous work and they say, oh, you know, it's a bit rough around the edges, but there's real potential, and I think this person now can handle, however, I mean, it's not much, it's 10 grand, which actually doesn't go far because you have to pay people. Not that you shouldn't pay people, but once you pay people, you've got about £5 left. But they can give you 10 grand, but, you know, they can think, well, I trust this person that they will deliver a film if I give them that money. So it's always good to have those other bits and bobs that they can look back on.
You mentioned being yourself being like a creative producer. What is that like, working closely with the talent?
It's really painful. It's long. I mean, there's amazing producers out there. Like, there's this guy called Matt Wilkinson, who I always reference. And if you look on his IMDb, he's just got loads of films on there. He manages to make like 4 feature films a year. But he doesn't work with writers, doesn't like it, doesn't enjoy it, finds it really boring, or also says that he's not very good at it. That's not his remit. So he gets lots of development people to do that for him. And then he's the guy that's got all of the contacts in the world to go out and find the funding, and he'll know what kind of film it is to pitch it at the right kind of person to get the funding. And then he also hates being on set, which is why he can make 4 films a year, because the film will start and then he'll go off, leave it in somebody else's hands. Whereas, like I said before, I like being there from the very beginning to the very end, which means I make less films, and I work with, most of my working day is reading scripts, giving pointers, giving notes, and then working with the execs who may have given us the money to write that script, and, you know, sort of liaising with them and building it up stage by stage. So it is a long process.
I don't know, for those in the room now, what's kind of some of the early tips they can have in terms of raising money, or, you know, finding that funding?
Well, short film funding is really, really hard, and it's something that's like industry known that there's not enough support. I mean, what you could do is, and what you should do, is email Alex at, I think her email's just a.jackson@bfi.co.uk, maybe, something like that, Google it. But she is your East Midlands or Midlands BFI representative, and she's based in Broadway. So get a coffee with her, talk to her about, you know, the networks that's going on. Even just maybe get her, I don't know if she's coming to Industry Week. Is she going to be here? Anybody know? If she's not, then she definitely should. And just meet her and say, I'm here, this is what I'm trying to do. Because even if you don't want to make a short film, she will know of short films that are happening that need trainees, and that's the best thing that you can do. So on every film that I've ever done, shorts or features, we've always had trainees, and they've always been support. They've always come through official backgrounds. So we've had confetti trainees on The Tunnel, which was the short film that I did. We had trainees from Trent. We had trainees from another college. I can't remember which one. And also on feature films, once you've sort of done the trainee on short films, I mean, you're not going to get paid if you're a trainee on a short film, I have to say. But short films are like 5 days, and then it's done. But once you've got a few of those under your belt, you can apply for, if you Google skill set or creative skill set, I think it's now called, they have a trainee finder scheme. So you log yourself on, put your profile on, say this is what you're doing, this is what you want to do. And they will, when there's feature films happening in your area, or if you say you're willing to travel, then they'll do it nationwide. When there's feature films happening, they'll let you know, and then you can apply for them. And if you get a traineeship on a feature film, then a bit like I was when I was on The Dole, you can work on that feature film, but you're being paid by skill set, not being paid by the production. And that's massively helpful for the production, because I think on Calibre we had, I think you're allowed to have 8 or 10 trainees per production, I can't remember. And we had one in pretty much every department. So it's a brilliant way for the producers to bump up their departments without a massive bill at the end of it. And it's a really great way for the trainees to work with incredible HODs. And you don't get paid badly, it's not bad at all.
And your style as a producer, how do you feel you work to get the best out of the people you work with? Are you quite hands-on, hands-off?
It depends who you're working with. So there's a couple of writers who are like teenagers. So if I nag them, then they're never going to meet the deadline because I've nagged them to meet them. So if I just leave them to it, they might meet the deadline. And then, but it's different, isn't it? Because when you're a producer, you're working not only with writers and directors, you're working with the entire crew. So it's just person by person. And one thing I do love about being a producer is the crewing up of productions, because you want to, that's quite creative in its own sense, because you're thinking, who do I think is going to work best with this director? Because you don't have to think about who's going to work best with me, because I'm not going to be on set all day. But who can I introduce this director to, who I think is going to get on, and who's going to enhance what this director's doing, and who's going to have some sort of creative input, and who's going to be able to riff off this person really nicely. So it's kind of, it's a bit of an HR job as well.
So moving on to like Art Docs and Wellington, your time with those companies, how did that help develop you as a producer?
Oh, massively. So Art Docs was who I did the documentary Joe and the Lion with, and Wellington was who I'd been working with. I only ever worked with them part-time, so it was only over 3 days a week. Excuse me. But Art Docs was brilliant because, like I say, I'd never done a documentary before, and I didn't know how to finance a documentary, because in the same way as a bit like with a feature film, with a feature film you've got your script, and that's what you're going to shoot. And so you raise all that money off the back of the script and the packaging. And in order to do a feature film, you have to have all of your money, and it has to all be in the bank before you're allowed to even start rolling the camera. With a documentary, it's kind of more, you don't need all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle before you start. You can do it bit by bit. So that was quite interesting. So we got like X amount from the Arts Council, X amount from Creative England at the time, X amount from, can't even remember now, quite a few different bits and bobs, and we did a crowdfunder as well. So that was interesting, just to learn how to build that jigsaw puzzle and really budget for every single section of the film that we were doing at the time, not have to budget for the overall thing. So that was a really brilliant learning curve. And it was just great to go to Ghana a few times and just work with these amazing people. And then in Wellington, I was there for so long. I think I did 4 short films with them as a producer and 2 features as producers as well. And they were just brilliant in that. Through them, I learnt to budget. I mean, Rachel Roby is really, really good at budgeting. So she taught me how to budget for any sort of film, really. How to put a finance plan together, finance plans are really boring and you have to know the technical side of what even the money means. And so you've got things called, you've got like equity finance, you've got gap finance, you've got mezzanine finance, you've got tax credit loan finance, all of these things. And if you have to know what they all mean in order to put your finance plan together and figure out a finance waterfall so that if the film ever goes into profit, which they rarely do, you know who gets their money back first. So all of those technical sides to putting a package together, I learned a lot from Wellington.
And working with those companies and in your role in general, networking must play an important part of that. How important is it? Very.
So I still do it now, I apply for any scheme that I think I'm eligible for. So we made the levelling through a scheme called iFeatures, which was funded by BFI, BBC Films, Creative England and Great Point Media. I think it was like the 4th iteration of that scheme. And that's a development scheme for the most part, where you apply with your film. At the time, you just had to have a treatment, and you apply with your team. So it was me, Rachel, Hope, and then along with a pool of other teams, you go into development, and you all go on workshops together, and you all have like, it's a bit like this, seminars together. You all help each other with each other's pitches and each other's scripts, and therefore you're networking in that sense because you're meeting all of these amazing filmmakers. And then the way that iFeatures used to work, it was a bit like the X Factor, where after each stage a few projects would get knocked down, and then at the end of it 3 were greenlit for production. So in our year it was The Levelling, Lady Macbeth and Apostasy. So any scheme, and I've applied for a similar scheme recently. I did iFeatures once after that with a different project. And all of that is networking. I'm applying for a Sundance scheme at the moment. So any schemes, any programs you think that you're eligible for, just apply for them. Because if you get on them, that is just like instant networking. And it's not as awkward as going into a room and just being like not knowing why you're there and wanting to talk to people. You're there for a reason because you've been selected. And there's the BFI Academy that Broadway, do you know about the BFI Academy? So you can apply for that was run out of Broadway. That's brilliant as well. And then you're sort of on the stepping stone into the BFI tree, if you like. And so I would definitely say do that. And then you're networking with your contemporaries as well. Because I know it's like really intimidating when you walk into a room and there's like people whose films you've seen all over the place. And you don't know how to talk to them. But if you're networking with your contemporaries, you will then soon be those people if you keep working at it.
Shall I give you a bit of a break and put on Parjo trailer? Right.
Portuguese?
Yeah, I saw that. No.
It has its own subtitles, so I think we
Oh,
should
it's done
try.
off, brilliant.
Yeah. He talks really fast.
Plenty coffees.
People normally believe coffins only matters about the death, but it's a piece of an art also.
In Ghana, we have a period of time where family, friends, relatives, and loved ones pay their last respect. In this time, most of them shout their messages to their loved ones.
Because of my mother, I may let the carpentry change my life.
So he needs to do his best because he has already said that he is making this lion the most beautiful ever.
have this down by the end of the third trailer.
Yes, because he has already said that he is making this lion the most beautiful ever.
Lead us, guiding spirit, lead us to where all good spirits reside.
Well, like I was saying, can wala ba fi enu e ba wo yidi papa yi ehi mi npon de je kan be de no go na etu be ni ma ya etu be ni mi nta wo le nu pepepe.
This is where the journey takes him. The apprentice must become the lion.
Do any of you know Bottle Top? They're based here, aren't they? You know Bottle Top, Mark Piper? Do any of you guys know him? So they're another company that you should talk to. I'm sure they're based in this building, I think. But Bottle Top are an animation and titles company, and it's something that Mark wants to do much more of. So Mark did all of the titles for Padre and the Lion. So where it looks like the flag and the material is coming down, he filmed real material and made this all look incredible. So he's a really interesting guy to talk to. And actually, these titles won the title, or were nominated at the titles competition at South by Southwest in 2018, I think. And he's just been nominated again in 2020 for some other titles that he did. So if that's something you're interested in, because that's big at the moment. I mean, if you watch any TV show, they've all got knockout title sequences. So that's a big thing to get into. So they're a really interesting company to talk to if you want to find out more.
A project like this, which is so perhaps obscure, how do you begin to get that off the ground?
That's a really interesting story, and it wasn't me that got it off the. Well, it wasn't me that found the subject. So Ben, the filmmaker, he made a short film about Paul Smith a long time ago called P.S. Your Mystery Sender. Because I don't know if you know about this, but Paul Smith, for years, you know, the fashion designer. Okay, you're all so young. I don't know if you'll even know Paul Smith. So for years and years and years, he's been receiving in the post just weird objects that have never wrapped or anything. They've just got stamps on them, and it can be like one ski or a watering can, or like anything you can think of. And he's sort of made a gallery of all of these in his big London studio. And Ben's wife used to work for Paul Smith, so he knew about the story. So Ben made a film about that, and then sort of like followed Paul Smith, and they kind of became good mates and whatever. And Paul Smith has a blog, and Paul Smith blogged about an exhibition of Parjo's coffins, because Paul Smith likes really kitsch things, and these coffins are quite kitsch. He blogged about an exhibition of those in London. Ben was like, oh, they look wicked, because Ben makes films about artists. He went to the exhibition, spoke to the guy called Jack Bell, who was the gallery owner. Jack Bell gave Ben Parjo's contact details. Ben thought he was talking to Parjo. Parjo can't talk English, so actually he was talking to Jacob. Anyway, that's when we found out. And then Ben got $5,000 from EM Media, because it was so long ago and EM Media was still happening. Ben got $5,000 from them to go to Ghana and just sort of do an exploratory trip and see who this guy was. And he went out there thinking he was going to make a short film about these pieces of art. But he learned that while he was there, even though Parjo has exhibited, I mean, if you live in Ghana, these are what and if you're a member of the GAR, this is the kind of coffin you're buried in. But to the Western gaze, we look at these as beautiful pieces of art. So Parjo has exhibited the world over. I mean, he's still got one in the Brooklyn Museum, he's got one in the British Museum, he's had a massive show in Paris. Even though he's exhibited the world over, his business at the time was completely on its knees, and he was struggling to keep himself afloat, and he thought his business was going to die, and with his business, his legacy would die, because most of his coffins are in the ground. So Ben was like, this is a beautiful story, came back, put a trailer together, showed it to me, and I said, this is a brilliant story, we need to make this. So going back to networking and schemes and stuff, I didn't know how to find any money for documentary, so we applied for every scheme that we could, and one of them was a scheme that Sheffield DocFest ran at the time called the Future Producers School. So I applied to that as a producer with this project, And through that, I met a bunch of people that put me in touch with people to find finance. And I also found our executive producer from that, who helped me find finance.
How does the funding differ between documentaries and short films or feature films?
You get, like, there's documentary funding in the UK is woefully shit. It's so bad. If you go to America, there's so much funding for documentary. And one reason, and also in the rest of Europe, because there's so many more TV channels, for one thing. We've only really got the BBC, Channel 4, and any of, and their subsidiary things. So funding is really, really bad. So then you're sort of looking at grant funding. So it's why we got Arts Council. I had to pitch it that we weren't making a film, we were making an art piece, which is why we got Padre to come over to the UK and do an artist residency. So I got about 50 grand for that, but we just filmed the whole thing. It's just hard, because unless you get a commission from a broadcaster for documentary, it's just ridiculous. There's like Doc Society who run the BFI's documentary money pot, but it's really bad. And you can get more money if you're doing journalistic stuff. There's things like the Bertha Fund, the Bertha Foundation, who have quite a lot of money for journalistic documentary, or The Guardian. But if you're making something observational like this, that doesn't really have an obvious broadcast platform and probably just going to go to festivals and maybe a few cinemas, it is hard, and you just have to grind it and find it.
From a producer's point of view, is there massive differences between producing a documentary versus a film?
Yeah, like I say, the financing is completely different. The creative side's completely different. Like, this was just, for the most part, me and Ben, either in Ghana or sat in his little office in Broadway. Whereas when you're making a feature film, it's mad how many people it takes to make a feature film. And it always surprises me when I see the credits and just think, what did all these people do? So just the scale of it is completely different.
When it comes to selling these projects on, what is the relationship between a sales agent and a producer?
Oh, that's a nice question. So it's easier to talk about it for a feature fiction film than it is for a documentary. So say I've got a project at the moment that we are financing. So we've got cast attached. She's a I don't know if any of you watched Sacred Games that was on Netflix. It was like India's first noir police thriller thing. Brilliant. And we've got the lead actor of that, Radhika Apte, and she doesn't sell. She's an amazing actor, but you don't say that to people and go, I've seen her, I'll go to the cinema and watch that film. So we can't sell the film off the back of that cast, but what we can sell that film off is the fact that it's so wildly unique. It's an art house vampire horror film set in Mumbai, and it's going to be in Hindi, and it's going to be shot on film, and it's going to be brilliant. And even though it's a debut film, debut feature, the filmmaker has made loads of incredible short films that show exactly the tone and the style that he is going to commit to the feature film. So the sales agent that we're working with, Protagonist, they don't care about the cast. They're like, we want to do it anyway. They don't care that it's quite expensive for a debut, because they're like, it's going to work. We just want to get behind this film. And they are so supportive. They've written a big distribution strategy that's helped me apply for funding from the BFI. So you have to really like your sales agent, because they will take a chunk of money at the end of it. So you need to know that they're going to do their job. And what a sales agent does is they sometimes put money into the budget of your film. Sometimes they don't. But what they will do is they'll have they're going to have the worldwide rights to sell our film in every single territory. So their job is to have all of those connections and relationships with the distributors in every territory around the world. And then they sell to the distributors, and then the distributors sell to the cinemas or the broadcasters. So that's how the chain works of a sales agent. But then there's another film that I'm packaging at the moment, which is a drama, and it will be set in Nottingham. But that is very cast dependent, because dramas are really, really hard to finance, because who wants to go to the cinema and feel sad? But if you can go to the cinema, feel sad, and Jessie Buckley, you know, like Oscar-nominated Jessie Buckley is in this leading role, you're more likely to go. So I can't get a sales agent on that film until I've got a cast that makes them think, I can definitely sell this.
And for those that are going to meet their sales agent for the first time and have never done it before, are there any red flags that, you know, that phrases they might say, think, oh, okay, we're not going to work well together?
Yeah, you just have to know that they completely understand your vibe and the vibe of the film. So the first and most brilliant experience I had with a sales agent was when we were putting Calibre together. So again, networking, schemes. There was, and look at these as well, look at film festivals. They often have like talent labs and things like that that you can apply for. So I applied for Edinburgh Film Festival Talent Lab with Calibre, because you have to, sometimes you have to apply with a project. So I applied with Calibre, and then part of the scheme or the project program, they did a speed dating session where you have like 5 minutes with each person at a table, all of the people should have read your project before you got there, should have read everybody's project that they're going to meet because they're getting paid to be there. And there's quite a few sales agents that I met during that speed dating. One of them was a guy called Paul Brett. Ugh. And he sat there eating his tuna baguette, said, let me get through the whole pitch, even though he should have read my synopsis. So he should have known that it was a thriller. He should have known it was set in Scotland. And he should have known it was probably going to be an 18, because 18s are quite hard to sell. He obviously hadn't read any of that. And just said, I don't like that film, tell me about something else. And I was like, ugh. So I told him something else, I don't like that film, tell me something else. Finally got to a film that I did like, and I got like one sentence in and said, it's a punk film set in the aftermath of the Sex Pistols' 1976 failed UK tour. And he went, you should have started with that. And I was like, oh. And I came away from that thinking that's his fault, because he didn't read about me. But actually that was my fault, because I hadn't read all of the blurbs of all of the people that were going to be there. And I should have said, okay, Paul Brett, he's done this, that, and that. I shouldn't really pitch Calibre to him because it's clearly not his bag. So that's something you really have to think about when you're meeting people. Do your research. Don't just think, I've got the best project ever and everyone's going to love it. Be like, what have they done? Like, there's some financiers out there who've got bags of money, but they're not going to do anything if it's going to make their kids cry, you know, because it's just not what they're looking for. But then the next table I went to on that speed dating was a sales agent that I'd never even heard of called Beta Cinema, who are German-based. And Torsten Ritter was the man I was pitching to. And I pitched I don't know if any of you have seen Calibre, but I pitched it to him, and I got just to the inciting incident, and then I said, I'm not going to tell you what happens next. And he said, I'm so glad you pitched it like that, because I was hoping it would be like that from how I read it. So he'd obviously read everything. And so we had a really nice vibe. And then because Matt, the filmmaker, lives in Edinburgh, I was able to invite Matt to the party that night, introduce him to Torsten, and they just had like a bromance over 70s horror films. And I just thought, this is going to work, because Torsten likes Matt, he likes what we're trying to do, he knows it's a first-time feature, but it's a thriller, and he can see that it's going to sell somehow. And he wasn't bothered about cast. He said, don't try and stunt cast this, because some sales agents were like, we'll sell this if you can get Tom Hardy and Cillian Murphy. And I thought, well, obviously we're not going to get those people. And so Torsten was like, don't stunt cast it or make the whole film a sham. Just get the people that feel right. And that's what we did. So you just have to have a nice rapport with people, because you're going to work with them for a long time.
Great. Let's move on to Screen Star of Tomorrow 2018.
Screen Star of yesteryear.
Well, I didn't want to say that, but since you've said it. So what is this programme?
So I don't know if any of you subscribe to, I mean, I don't because it's expensive, but there's an industry magazine called Screen International. And every year, you can have it online or you can have the printed version. And every year they select, and actually it's interesting for you guys because they've opened it up now. They used to just select every year a bunch of writers, producers and directors that they have with their crystal balls magically thought these people are going to go on and do something quite good in the future. So it's kind of like picking people at the beginning of their careers that they think are going to go big. And if you look at all of the people they've had for all of the years they've done it, there's a brilliant track record, particularly in the acting category. Excuse me. And so this was us in 2018. So they picked me after I'd just done Calibre. So this is all just writers, directors, producers. But actually, in the last few years, they've opened it up to the craft section. So as DPs or sound designers, production designers, costume designers, they are now getting pulled into the Screen Star list as well. And it's really good. You get lots of exposure. You get a nice photo shoot. You get to network with all of those. It's the first time I'd met lots of those people. I think there's an actor here from Nottingham. She's from Nottingham. She was in Star Wars or something. Star Trek, Star Wars. I think she went to the television workshop. But there's loads of amazing people there. I think that's Prano Bailey Bond, who did Censor. I don't know if any of you have seen that. It's been out in the cinemas recently. And it was starring Neve there. These are all like writers, directors. That's me. That's Amina, who's recently produced Ali and Ava. That's got loads of BAFTA nominations. And she's just done Clive Bernard's new film. So there's really brilliant people on there. And that's what Screen Stars is. They sort of pick you out and think you're going to go on and do stuff. Oh, and the writer-director of St Maud. Did anyone see St Maud? Yeah, she's on there at the bottom there.
And what opportunities does that open up for you being awarded this?
It's just really nice to put in your biography. And it does, people do cite you. I don't know, it does open up doors. I mean, I'm now working with Amina because we met there, so that's another networking opportunity thing. I'm going to be working with Liv here, actor, who I met there. So it just, you know, you're building, on that respect, you're building your network again. Your network is getting to be a sort of higher caliber, if that makes sense. And you get to go to a really nice dinner with people.
And so are there any other schemes or programmes that the young filmmakers in this room should think about getting their name onto as quick as possible, or applying for, or getting involved with?
I would say BAFTA Crew, definitely. BFI Academy. Screen Skills. Look at their trainee finder at your stage. And do you know what? I mean, we're in a production boom at the moment. Like, it's crazy. People are getting paid so much money. It's ridiculous. You can't make a low-budget film anymore. Because there's just so much... Because we've got so many streamers, so many content providers, there's not enough content to fill them. So everyone's just working all the time, particularly post-COVID. So get in now, like... email production companies, say, have you got anything going? I'll work for free, I'll be a trainee, whatever. Because now's the time to do it, because there's just so much going on. And there's not much going on in the East Midlands, which is a shame, which I can talk about forever. But West Midlands has got a lot going on, Birmingham Way. Sheffield's got a lot going on. Try and stay out of London. I'd like it if you all sort of stayed regional. So look at those companies, look what they're doing, look at Creative Skillset, BFI Academy, BAFTA Crew. I think they're the good starting points. I think everything else is the next stage up.
So your latest endeavour, Griffin Pictures, how did that start? What can you tell us about that?
So I started that. So when we finally did Calibre, which took 10 years from script to screen, and when my producer's fee finally hit the bank, which felt like a lot of money at the time, but when you break it down over 10 years, it's like 80p an hour. I thought, I need to do something with this. I need to not just squander it. And because I was only working with Wellington 3 days a week, I had 2 days a week to do other stuff. So I quietly launched my own production company, was able to pay myself those other 2 days a week. So suddenly I was getting not a lot of money at all, because you don't pay yourself well, but 5 day a week money. And that gave me the time to find writers I wanted to work with outside of the Wellington umbrella. And also as well, I just wanted to be able to make my own mistakes and I just wanted to not be part of a company so much anymore. So I started building my own slate, working with different writers, applying for lots of schemes, and then did a couple of short films and got some development money for feature films and also some development for a TV show. And so while that was all quietly happening, the BFI then launched their new round of the Vision Awards, which is, they do it every few years, and it's for producers only. And they've always changed their remit, and this was the first year I was actually eligible to apply. So I think this time you had to have made 1 or 2 feature films, and it was to support producers who are going on to the next level of their career and wanting to make bigger feature films or whatever. And so that is basically 2 years worth of business support. And so when I got that, I was able to leave Wellington Films because I had the Vision Awards money. And then since then, I've been able to just expand. I've got someone working with me freelance who I can pay for. So she does lots of development now. So it's really nice. I feel like I'm building my own little vibe.
And the name of your company, was that designed to try and keep people knowing who you were as you try and move from one to the other?
No. It's just really hard to find a company. It's a bit like if any of you are in a band, and every band name you think of sounds really wanky. So every name I was coming up with sounded really bad. I just thought, fuck it, I'll just Griffin Pictures. Because Griffin's quite a strong surname. And that's it. And that's just the tattoo I've got on my arm. So there was literally as thought through as that. That's it.
Shall we have a look at the Calibre no, not Calibre. Yes, Calibre.
Yeah.
Brain. We'll look at the trailer and then we'll look at the behind-the-scenes clip as well. So, let me find Netflix. I need 2 hands.
Promise me you look after yourself.
Yeah. I'm going hunting.
So how you been? All this baby shit, it must be mad.
I know, I'm sorry. I know you always wanted to be the one I got pregnant.
Marcus, Trenton and Bon Carter, 3 nights?
That's right, yes.
You guys picked the perfect weekend to be here.
It's boozy as hell.
Well, you boys have a good day's hunting out there, eh?
We will.
Reckon you can take down a deer?
Probably not, no.
Not everyone can do it.
We just go to the police and
Go to the police. It'll be considered murder. We go to that town, we come back here tonight. You have no choice.
Successful day stalking? We're putting together a search party.
What were you doing last night? What real evidence have we got? Nothing. We were wrong. I'm not gonna pay for it.
Let's go!
Everything I did here, I did to protect us. I'm so sorry. That's not gonna be enough. That's not gonna be nearly enough.
So, and this is behind the scenes of that. Sorry.
165, take 1.
Thank you very much. And action!
Seek, come on, seek. Seek. Seek, come on, seek. Come on. Angus, has he got something? It's come up.
Up here!
Here!
Oh, Jesus, oh, Jesus!
And cut. And cut there. Forward. Upper. Okay, into that lovely nut.
They come in. And as soon as they grab a fucking spade and move. Yeah. Lovely work. Did you do that for the... Yeah. Oh, look at you acting hard because of the... Oh, fuck!
Ian, say goodbye to the people because it's all on camera.
Yeah, but not needed.
Action. Yada.
Oh, God, it's cold. It's fucking cold.
There is nothing more than fucking.
Fucking cold. It's fucking cold.
Alright, here we go. Take one. Here we go then, and action!
Great, we can cut there, thank you.
Cut there.
That works good actually, didn't it?
The fact it's messy is not a bad thing.
No, it's actually described.
I just want to point out it wasn't me that dropped them.
Lovely, good. And that's a wrap, folks. Let's pack it all up. Let's go home, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Can't find the button. There's the button. So, what was your relationship like with the directors and other crew members in that?
No, that was really good. So when we were, because like I said, Calibre took 10 years from script to screen, which is a long time. So Wellington had had that project before I'd even started. And it was Matt's debut film. He'd never really made a short film. I'd made one, and it was only okay. So while we were developing, so with Calibre, I managed to get development money from both Creative England and Creative Scotland, which enabled us to develop the script. While we were doing all of that, we applied for a short film making scheme called Collaborate, which I don't think happens anymore, sadly, but it was run and funded by Rankin, you know, the photographer. And they made like 8 short films a year. And with Matt and with the other producer, Al, we made a short film on that. And what we needed to do with that short film was prove that Matt could make something that would create tension and leave that tension hanging there for a really long time. So I don't know if you've seen Calibre, but once the tension goes up there, you're there. And then it goes like that. So he needed to show that he could do that and pull it off. So we made this really tense short film called The Gas Man. It's on, I think it's on Vimeo, you can watch it. And again, that sort of starts, the tension goes up and up and up, and then it stays there. So I was prepping this entire short film from Nottingham, shooting it up in Scotland with Matt remotely. And the first time I met him was on like the first day of filming in Scotland for that short film. And we didn't get on to begin with. Matt was really anxious. I was really anxious. I needed to make a good short film. He needed to make a good short film. And we went shopping for the crew to get like stuff for the tea table and snacks and stuff. And he wanted to buy really expensive apples. And we had like a budget of £3. And he just kept putting them in the trolley like a toddler. And then when we got to the checkout, I'd noticed all these really, like, you know, the kind of apples that are like £1 an apple, like those sort of things. And he was like, but we need these, we need the crew to make sure that we're looking after them. And I was like, the crew aren't going to fucking like you because you bought expensive apples. And he just walked out like a child. And I was left in the middle, and I was like, have I just completely ruined this film and this just broken down over apples? And then we just sort of hugged it out in the car park, and we realised how ridiculous we'd both been. And from that point on, we got on really well. And so we did The Gas Man. That played all the festivals we needed it to play, like it played all the Fright Fest festivals and all those ones we needed to hit, so that then people could see that not only could Matt make a film that created and kept that tension, but that we as a team could make a film that created and kept that tension, so that when we were packaging this, we could link people to The Gas Man and they could understand what we were trying to do with this. And we had a really good time. It was a hard shoot. Everything that can go wrong on that shoot went wrong, like to the ridiculous, to the tragic. Like it snowed when we didn't want it to snow. So there's loads of continuity issues that no one actually picks up on. The makeup designer had a brain hemorrhage on one day. And that was really frightening because it was a Saturday, because we were filming 6 days, 5 days, what you call 11-day fortnight. So for over 2 weeks, you have one full weekend off and then only one day off in the weekend. And it happened on the Saturday that we were working. And so someone was knocking on her door being like, where are you? So thankfully we were working. And she's fine now. So that happened. The standby props guy crashed the Jeep, broke his rib. Prior to that, he'd fallen over in the woods and smashed his tooth out. Everything that could go wrong. Oh, the first AD walked out on the first week. In the middle, he literally said, I'll get you out the woods and then I'm leaving. So he used that sort of metaphor, which was really annoying. And so he left. Then we had to get another first AD. So we stopped filming for a day. Had to get another first AD who could only do 2 days. Then we had to get another first AD. Oh, it was just really stressful. But the thing is, like, with a film, same with the short film, feature film, once you start shooting, the train has left. You can't stop it. You've just got to catch up with it. And thankfully, we had the rest of the crew were incredible. And the cast, Jack and Marcus, no, that's the character's name, Jack and Martin, was so lovely to be around. And the whole gang, really, they were so lovely to be around. They kept everyone buoyed up, even though it was so cold.
A trivial question, but who won the apple argument?
I did.
Good. What was it like shooting in real locations and what looks like quite raw locations as well? What sort of challenges did you face with that?
The cold, for one thing. Because we were out in B. Craig's Woods, which is just on, like, kind of near Edinburgh-ish. We could only film, obviously the film's set at night, so we were having to do night shoots all the way through the woods. So the challenges of that are just mainly safety. Also because it was very boggy, so you had to make sure that it was lit for safety, but that wasn't affecting lit for camera. Just very cold. Cold, dark, wet, windy. So all of the safety issues that come into play with all of that. And all of the safety issues that come into play with doing a lot of night shoots, just making sure that people aren't too tired. When people are tired and it's night, there's a lot that can go wrong. But what I always like, and this happened with the levelling as well, because we were shooting on location, all cast and crew were staying together in the same place. So we were all in, like, this big caravan park. Weirdly, the house that is the bed and breakfast, that's owned by people who live in Nottingham. It's really weird. So when I was scouting it, and I met the owners, and I said where we're from. And they were like, oh, we're from Nottingham as well. They live in Bunny, which is really strange. Anyway, went off track. But yeah, all the cast and crew were staying in the caravan park that they owned as well. So we were all together all the time. So there was the camaraderie. And when we were doing the levelling, we were all staying in the same housing place. It was like a new development that hadn't yet been rented out. There was sort of holiday lets, so we managed to bag that place. So we were all together all the time. So we would go to the director's house and watch the Bake Off, and we'd have movie nights. And it just meant that you've got your team all day, every day. And if you want to leave it, obviously you can. But it's nice to have that camaraderie. And it also breaks down that hierarchy, which I hate, where people think, oh, the director's not approachable, or the producers aren't, or don't talk to the DP. It's like, well, if the DP is watching Bake Off with you, then it's fine.
Do you do anything that helps, like, set the tone of how to work on the set, the kind of mood you want people in and the way you expect them to behave?
That's a good one, actually, because when the first AD walked off, first AD walked off Calibre, he was behaving like an absolute child, and because the first AD has to keep it all together. They run the floor. If they're losing it, then everybody else is going to lose it. And he was just creating this, like, horrible energy on set. And I had to talk to him every day and be like, are you okay to do this? What vibe have you got today? Like, what's your headspace at? And when it was clear that he wasn't doing it, I had to, like, take him away, talk to him and just say, look, get through this and you can leave, feel free to leave tomorrow. And then that sort of set a dark tone with the whole, particularly with the cast. So the next day I had to go around to every cast and say, look, I know what happened. We've got a new first AD. That's not how we want to run this show. It's all going to be better from here. But if you're feeling shit, or if you're feeling anxious about anything that's happening, if we're not doing it right, just come and tell us. And you just have to make sure that you're super transparent. And I think the director has a massive role to play with that as well, because the director is on set all the time. And Matt's really funny. He would just, he's quite odd, Matt, in a really brilliant way. And he's dead into meditation. And in the middle of, like, a light setup in the middle of the woods where everyone's running frantic, Matt would just be sat down by a tree meditating. And you can't, that's sort of just like, that sets a tone. It's like, if he's meditating in the middle of all this chaos, then I think we're going to be okay.
Just thinking back to some of the very early films that you would have worked on, have you got any tips on helping a crew keep running while people might have, like, the name of director, producer by name together collectively, they've all got this, they've all got their own ideas and input, and keeping the tension right on the set and keeping people friendly?
Yeah. So how do I talk to crew, you mean? Well, again, just similar, you know, like when Sarah had what happened to Sarah, the makeup artist, you know, that was a really awful thing and quite traumatic for lots of people. So you just have to make sure that everyone's okay all the time and be nice. Like, it doesn't, even if you're having a shit day, don't walk onto set and have a face on. You know, you have to say, hey, are you okay? How you doing? Do you want a cup of tea? You know, just be approachable, because I don't understand why people wouldn't be. There's actually like the old school first ADs who used to be like really shouty and bangy and think that's how they've got to make their day and get the set right and everything. That's kind of thankfully gone. And I think everyone's much more used to self-care and the care of the crew, because there's no point just it's like being in a classroom, like you're not going to get the best out of your pupils if you shout at them all day. Just be conscious of who you're working with and be appreciative that they're bringing all of their talent to your film. Like, I can't be a boom up, but no idea how that works. I can't do anything in the art department. I can't configure anything with a camera. So I've got all of these people that can do that. So just be really thankful.
So when you think about getting funding for films and pitching them and, you know, working on them, how do you kind of balance this idea of market value, cultural value and industry value of that film?
He's nicked that from a Zoom we had the other day. Market value, cultural value, industry value. Okay, so that's interesting. So what I was talking about there is the different kinds of films you're trying to make and who you're making them for. So if you're something like Caliber, one of the reasons that was really hard to finance, because even though it was a debut feature film, which the BFI is always the go-to for debuts, because they say they want to support first-time talent and they want to be there from the beginning and all of that crap, they turned it down twice because they said, this is too commercial for us, you can get the money from the market, meaning private finance. And I said, well, that's ridiculous, because Matt is a first-time filmmaker and the market aren't going to risk putting money into a film and a filmmaker they don't know can deliver it. So that's why our film Caliber was really difficult to finance, because it fell between two stools. It wasn't quite commercial enough for the market to finance fully, and it wasn't culturally relevant enough for the BFI to put their money into. So BFI put money into like lovely films, but the kind of things that Broadway will show and 7 people will go and watch. And that's the other thing about cultural value. So like The Levelling had a lot of cultural value to it, which is why it was financed by the public film bodies. It was about real events that had happened not that long ago in Somerset, you know, with the flooding and everything that happened like in 2000, I'm going to say 14, where Somerset was very badly flooded, and it affected lots of the farming community particularly. And in the farming community, there was lots of suicides as a result. So it had lots of cultural value in that, and it was very earnest, important storytelling, and it had a female filmmaker. So the cultural value of that was at the top. So I was like, well, we're never going to get the money from the market for this. It has to be publicly financed. And then the industry value is like, I want it to win awards. So do I want it to make loads and loads of money, or do I want it to play at Cannes and maybe get nominated for a BAFTA and perhaps not make that much money? So you just have to think, why am I making this film and who am I making it for? And then when you've figured that out, you can kind of work out who you need to pitch it to and who's going to give you the money.
And do you think about this before you say yes to producing a film, or do you know, does the film grab you, its idea, and then you start working this bit out?
I should think about this much more, and I should think I only want to make market films because then I'd have more money. But I'm drawn to films of more cultural value and industry value, which is why I probably make less films.
And as a producer, what would you, moving on to another slide, what would you say is what is the most enjoyable aspect of producing for you?
Well, that was nice, having a nice rapport with the lead actor. Is the most enjoyable is first day of filming, because you're like, whoa, the train's moving, we're here. And then the final day of filming, But then when you see it all on the big screen, or, you know, like if it's got into a festival, or the cast and crew screening, when everyone's back together, and everyone's probably forgotten about it because it was 3 years ago when you shot it. But yeah, I'd say that's the most enjoyable. But actually being in post-production, that's fun. Because I know nothing about post-production, but I love sitting in the grading suite and just watching and just being like, oh, pictures.
Does producing get less challenging and less difficult over time, or is it always tough?
I guess it does if you build up such a reputation that every film you've made has been stellar, and then everyone thinks, well, I'll give you X amount of money because the next one's going to be stellar. So I think it would in that respect, but the industry is always changing. It's changing so rapidly that you've just always got to be on your toes. And also, there's no money to be made in film anymore. If you're not trying to make TV, you're never going to have enough money to live on. Like, independent film doesn't pay. So you have to be thinking about, how am I going to get money from elsewhere? How am I going to just create content for something else to support? If independent film is your passion, you don't want to let go of it, you have to think, okay, how can I do other stuff to support that? Because that's not going to get me a holiday.
You mentioned your enjoyment of the post-production process. What is your involvement in that?
Nothing.
Nothing at all? Just enjoying the pictures?
I'm awful. As you know, I mean, you've edited my short film, because I can't, absolutely no idea. I'm not even that sure how, no. Deliverables, like, I just send them to the post-production house and say, can you create these, and hope that they can talk to the editor and make it happen, because I can't do it.
And talking about independent film and kind of where we've seen it before and where it is currently, what do you think is the future of the East Midlands film industry?
Oh, God. Oh, that's such a hard one. It's interesting. Creative England, they're not called that anymore, Creative UK, have just released a regional report about productivity outside of London, and the East Midlands has come up last. And that's no surprise, because like I said before, when we had EM Media, it was amazing. There's stuff going on all the time. And we had studios. We had I don't even know if you guys know about the Carlton TV studios out in Lenton. I mean, you know, but the students don't know. This is mad. So, oh God, you're so young. Do you remember, like, I mean, you won't, but have you heard of Bullseye, or, okay, good, or Crossroads, or Peak Practice, or what else was fun? Supermarket Sweep, and all these things. But the reason, have you heard of the Television Workshop? Where the actors, okay, so the reason the Television Workshop even existed was because we had these studios. It was like a feeding school, because there's loads of kids' TV being filmed there. And they're the old Carlton TV studios, which are out on Lenton Industrial Estate, and they're owned now by Nottingham University. And they're woefully mismanaged. We shot the tunnel there, and they're amazing studios, proper sound spaces. We shot the tunnel there a long time ago now. I'm going to try really hard not to go on a rant. But basically, those studios are really mismanaged. And they have a church that uses them for their church services, Saturdays and Sundays, which means that you can't be in there at the weekend. Which means that if you're a production that wants to use studios, you just can't. It's not feasible. So Vicky McClure's TV show wanted to film there, and they were like, we can't just film Monday to Friday. That's ridiculous. So they didn't. Loads of people have had the same issue. So that needs to change. And I'm talking to quite a lot of people about how and if that can change. Because if we can get those studios back up and running, create a sort, and this is why I want to actually talk to Craig and Penny, if there's sort of an educational element to those studios, and you can, all these skills that you've been learning here, there was films happening or TV shows happening or any productions happening that you could go and get paid for and utilise those skills, then that means you don't have to bugger off to London, or you don't have to go to Birmingham, or you don't have to go to wherever. And I want there to be the industry, again, that I fell into, that means that you can all stay here and be part of it. So the future for East Midlands film industry, I don't know, but I think those studios need to be part of it. And I think what's happened in the West Midlands, where, you know, they do Peaky Blinders and stuff like that, they've got a production fund, which is run by Creative UK now. But all of that was European Union money, which of course we can't access anymore. So there has to be, I think, a conglomerate that comes together and says, okay, here's a small production fund and here's a studio entity, and see if there's something that can happen there. Because before the studios got sold to Nottingham Uni, Control was shot there, you know, the film about Joy Division. Goal 3, the film that never should be made, was shot there. Bunny and the Bull, which was a Warp Films production, that was shot there. So all these really beautiful feature films were shot there, and then Nottingham University bought it, and they store the D.H. Lawrence stuff in one of the studios, and their big IT hub is there. But the rest of it is just empty. It's really sad. So if we can if you know anybody, if you know really rich people, because I know how much they might sell their studios for, if you know rich people, tell me. And we'll just buy it, and we'll say, let's do something. It can be the Confetti Griffin Studios.
We'll put a lottery ticket on a week, see what happens. Yes. Right, we'll go to the most, perhaps, risky part of any talk. Any questions from the audience?
Oh, I love that film.
Let's do microphone. It's always more fun that way.
1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, there we go. So, as a producer, what would you say is the best way for directors to get in contact with you? Because I know a lot of people are sort of against cold calling, cold emailing. What would you say is the best way for new directors to pitch themselves to producers?
Going back to the scheme thing, I mean, I would say email me, but I just do not have the bandwidth for that at all. Because I've got a little boy and he works 3 days a week and blah, 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 blah. So get yourself in those schemes, get yourself on those programs. That's how I did it. That's how you meet the people you want to work with. That's how you meet the writers you want to work with. And if you've got that team, that director-writer team, then you're I don't know, it's an easier pitch to the producer. Do you know what I mean? It's like, get on all of those schemes that you can, because like I say, it's the easiest networking. There's no intimidation. It's not scary. Everybody is at the same level as you. And those schemes are run by the people you want to take notice of you. They're run by the BFI. They're run by Creative UK or Skillset, and they're the people that will then matchmake you with producers that they think you should talk to. So I get a lot of referrals from Alex. You know, she's like, I hope you don't mind, I've given this person your email address, or can I give this person your email address? Because she's like the BFI filter. So talk to Alex as well. Just Google Alex Jackson, BFI Midlands, or BFI Hubs Midlands. She's based in Broadway, and talk to her as a first port of call, I'd say.
Small change of plan. I will repeat the question. So if you've got one, shout it out, and I'll paraphrase. If I paraphrase it wrong, tell me. Lee, do you have a question?
Working with your director Full Calibre, and obviously you had that tip in the supermarket, but in terms of the control, so you've sort of come up with the idea or you've worked collaboratively, when it comes to producer director, obviously they've got a vision and you might have a vision, how much control do you give to the director if you think he's shooting at that and you're like, oh no, how do you balance that, or do you pass it directly to him and you're like, no, I want your input as well? How do you balance that?
So the question is about balancing the control of the idea between director and producer, and how you manage that.
That's a really good one. I think it's different for each project. And going, I sound like a stuck record, but going back to all these schemes and programs, there was quite a few teams that didn't even make it, or often don't make it through the development stage, because the financiers and the execs can tell that as a team they're not on the same page. They're not trying to make the same film. And that's something you just always have to be aware of. I mean, ultimately, I'm there to facilitate the vision of the writer or the writer-director. So there's always a balance transfer. You know, and if you're a writer, at some point you've got to relinquish control to the director, who's got to have their own vision to make it happen. And as a producer, I'm there to support that. But if I think you're doing something crazy, I'll say, or if it's like really technical and we're on set or something, and I'm like, that won't edit together with that. you need, the director needs to know, because sometimes directors can just quite rightly go off in their own lovely little visionary worlds. But I would never enforce my vision of the film onto a director, because that's not my role. I'm not the director. I'm there to make sure that they get what they want out of their head onto the screen. And if I can't do that, then I'll step away.
Do you stay with certain directors that you've worked with and say, oh, we want to do another film? And do you find that you've worked with the same one but like continuously, or directors come to you and you're like, oh, we'll work with that, like the balance with that?
So do you find you get like a continual working relationship with people that you like working with, rather than finding new people each time?
Absolutely, and I think I'm at that stage in my career where I haven't made enough stuff to be like working with the next person, or doing lots of projects with the same person. But I'm building towards that. So on my slate of films, I've got like 3 projects with the same person. I've got 3 projects with Karan, the guy who's doing the crazy vampire thing in India. There are 3 projects with him. I've got 3 projects with Sam. I mean, they've not all happened yet, but I want to be, in a selfish way, because if Karan can nail Sister Midnight, then I know his next film is going to be easier to finance than if I'm working with another person who's making their first film. So in a selfish way, I want to make sure that I'm there as their careers progress, because I want my career to progress with them. So yeah, there's 3 people I'm currently working with that I have more than one project with, definitely. They just haven't happened yet.
No, go on. Okay.
We'll come back.
Any other questions? All of you are working on films at the minute? A good third of you are graduating in a few months and need to find funding? Surely you've got some questions.
Yeah, it's that.
Okay.
So it's like sale agents and funding for it, and you've got the schemes and things, the BFI and all that. In terms of, so you've made the package of the film, when you say like film treatment to a sale agent, how much of your own money, because obviously with students like you might have to have like another job, how much do you fund in that? Do you try and source funding for that?
As directors or writers, you would never approach the sales agents directly. That's what you kind of have the producer for. So that's like how the train goes. It's like, because otherwise your head will get screwed up with sales figures and financing. That's not what you need to be thinking about. So you would never approach, sorry, the question was sort of like, how much of your own funding, I think, do you put into what you're trying to do? Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's as much or as little as you want or can, I think. And you just have to make the decision of, is this going to go? I mean, Matt, when we were making Calibre, like I say, it took 10 years from script to screen. He was having to support himself because he lives in Edinburgh, working at the Edinburgh Parliament, because he is also a sound recordist. So he was doing sound recording at the same time. His day job was working at the Edinburgh University and just recording the parliamentary talks. Switching the microphones on and off, and also working at his wife's company. She has a charity filmmaking company. You've just got to, I don't know, it's a really difficult thing to answer because you've got to make a living. But also as well, don't think, you've all got to start somewhere, so get a job at a film production company, even if you're just making tea. That will lead to something, that will make you meet somebody, that will get you to the next job. Get those jobs on the free trainee scheme stuff and get onto a production, and then you'll move around. And if you've got the freedom to move around the country, then do it. Like I worked all over the country before I came back to Nottingham and made all of those connections. So just, yeah, I hope that answers it. I'm not sure that it did, but.
Any others? Keep catching my eyes. Surely. Okay, well then, if we can thank Anna for our time with us today, that'd be great. Thank you so much. I don't have an exit script, so see ya.
See ya.
Have a good rest of the week.